Thanks for being here. Mm, mhm.
All right, hey guys, welcome to Wapiti Wednesday live Q&A for November 20th. I'm excited for tonight because this has been a few weeks in the making to get everything lined up.
Yep.
But guys, tonight we got a special guest. I've talked to you guys in the past about him. We have Mike Edgehouse. And in fact, Mike, let's just jump right in. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background and your Cutright mobile app.
How deep in the background you want me to go?
I don't think we need to go all the way to childhood. So, but yeah, kind of who you are, what you do, and
Okay, so we'll skip childhood. We'll start at 11. Um,
perfect.
so no, I grew up in small town Ohio, actually, guys. So I know there's one from Oklahoma there, but I grew up in small town Ohio with killing deer and hanging it from an oak tree in the front lawn, and always nobody in my family hunted but me, and I've cut my own meat since I've been 11 years old, and then went to med school and learned even more about anatomy, cutting up dead people, cadavers in the cadaver lab. And then went to graduate school and started teaching because I found my true passion was teaching. And then, so lifelong hunter, started chasing elk, oh man, 15 years, 16 years ago. And, I've always been cutting meat, started a little side hustle to run weekend classes to teach people how to field dress and cut meat. But after 2 years and going $40,000 in debt in 2 years on that, I realized that was not well, I didn't realize it. My wife realized it was not a good side hustle because it was actually losing way more money than we had. So I pitched an idea after talking with a friend in Bozeman, John Gabriel, of putting together an app that teaches people how to field dress, butcher, and then has recipes on it as well. And pitched that over to the boys at Got Game Tech, and they jumped all over it. That was about 4 years ago, and it took a year and a half to film everything. So the Cutright mobile app is video and written instruction, and the videos are long format and short format on there. They can all download to your phone on how to do the gutless method on, well, we have two critters on there right now, elk and deer. And then which the field dressing portion is great, but if I had hair, it'd be blown back with the butchering portion. I mean, as weird as it sounds, I love butchering animals. I absolutely love it. Um, when I draw a stick figure, and I think it's about as good as it could ever get. I can't build shit. I can't do anything, but taking a hind quarter or front quarter that somebody brings into me or I pick up at their house and making absolutely perfect looking cuts that they open up and they eat and they're like, my God, I don't even know what this is. Well, how do you say to cook this on the package? And making it look amazing and beautiful for them. Man, it really gets me going. And then um, my dad cooked all the time. So I've been toying with cooking since I've been 12 years old. And then, really got into the wild game cooking once I started killing a bunch of animals when we moved to Idaho. And that's developed, you'll see similarities in my recipes on the app. There's a bunch of recipes on the app, and on my Instagram there's even more. You'll see similarities to stuff you might find in a restaurant, but there's always a twist to them to make them more wild game friendly. I last year or 2 years ago, I toyed with eating raw venison, tartar style deer, and I used just the traditional recipes that you find online, and it was just missing something. So I shifted some things around a little bit, changed proportions, added a couple new ingredients, and it was perfect. And kind of that's the way it is with all my recipes. I go to restaurants or I see stuff online and get inspiration and say, oh, that looks good, but that flavor won't work with elk, or that flavor won't work with deer. Deer doesn't taste like moo cow. Elk doesn't taste like moo cow. How can we make this more friendly for it? Um, and The video portion on the app is pretty amazing. You can download it to your phone so you're never without it in the field. And, a lot of us, I know how much I charge to butcher. I charge $500 to start butchering an elk, and it only goes up from there depending upon what specialty cuts. And a deer is $300. And I tell people that say I charge too much. I say, well, download a 14.99 app, and it's as good as having me in front of you. Mirror it to your TV, and it's not Steve Ranella. I like Steve, so I'm not bashing anybody. It's not Steve Ranella or Fresh Tracks or somebody. You see him start cutting and then you see the end product. I'm actually butchering the freaking animal along with you. So you have a hind quarter there, I have a hind quarter there. I go over the anatomy. As I'm taking off the silver skin or the rind from aging, you guys could be doing the same thing. And it's real time. So the videos are longer, but it's literally, I walk you through every step, tell you what every cut is, how to cook it, what's appropriate for grind, what's not. So that's the Cutright mobile app in a pretty big nutshell. Would you say, Michael?
Yeah, yeah, no, and I was just gonna kind of touch on it, guys. I mean, you hear the horror stories online where you work hard, you put your tag on an animal, you take it to a butcher, and then it's like, man, is this really your meat? I mean, you took the time out in the field and the meticulous effort to, make sure it's clean and dry, and you take it in, and then here's somebody that, I mean, their quarter is just covered in hair and dirt, and okay, are you really getting your stuff back, or are you getting, their stuff back? Did they really do did they pay attention to, temperature? Because there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, it's 50 degrees at night. I can hang these quarters for days. And it's like, well, no, if you're down in the 40s at night and that 40 is driving that cold in, you're okay. But 50s, no, you need to get that into a meat locker. But the other thing too is now you have control of your cuts, because I know a lot of butchers and okay, I almost went down another rabbit hole, which is another question, but we'll table that one because I know I know, Mike, you and I feel the same on this other topic. But when you're cutting your own, how many of you guys on a beef like a flank steak or a flat iron steak? Don't everybody answer at
How
once.
many like it? How many like it?
Yeah, who likes a flat iron steak or
Oh,
a
flat iron's
flank steak?
great.
Okay,
Ribeye.
have
Flat
those are two of the cuts that barbecue so incredibly well. You can do such great flavor profiles. But how many of you have ever got a flat iron steak or a flank steak from your butcher when you dropped off an elk?
I've never got a flat iron from a butcher.
Why not?
Why not?
I I don't know. Good question. I
Find a
get,
different.
I get sirloin. I get top round.
Backstrap, tenderloin.
Tenderloin, of course, tenderloin, and
Yeah. So where do you think that flank steak and that flat iron ends up
oh, probably I would say in the burger pile.
in your burger?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Mike, you agreed those two cuts on an elk are some of the most
Oh yeah.
versatile
Yeah.
cuts and some of the most amazing, flavorful, and you can do. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is a grilled flank steak salad.
Yep.
That, man, you do that with a Parmesan ranch dressing or something like that, and it's just phenomenal. So that's one of the advantages. Now, mind you, everybody's going to sit there and say, well, I don't have the room. I don't have the tools. I don't, well, you don't need a bandsaw. You don't need all these things that you see, at your butcher. So, I mean, Greg, your island right behind you, perfect. Bring
It's
it in
big
one
enough.
quarter at a
Yeah.
time. You don't have to bring in the whole dang animal and do it.
You'll see on the app. My wife loves it, and I say that facetiously. There's no love there with that. It is filmed in my kitchen on my kitchen island,
Yeah.
which is just a little 6 foot long kitchen island. You take that lower shank off the animal and where the hoof and stuff is, and you just bring the animal in and do it. And in regards to, people, this, hopefully I'm not stepping on anybody's toes here, Michael, but the the knife industry has marketed $350 boning knives to you, and it is entirely unnecessary. I can tell you, they're the only butchers that use $350 knives to bone their animals are the bearded butchers, because they get those knives from Montana Knife Company for free. I love Montana Knife Company in the field, but you talk to a butcher, you talk to myself, talk to James Nash, talk to the guys that Get Your Meat LLC in Boise where Michael lives, talk to any of those guys. We use $30 Victorinox 6 or 8 inch boning knives. We get them from Amazon, usually in 3 packs for like $75. And I've been using the same 6 knives, and I do about 40 elk a year and about 45 deer a year. I've been using the same 6 knives for 5 years.
And what brand is that again, Mike?
So that is Victorinox. And you go to Amazon and just type in Victorinox boning knives. I think, I made a mistake on an Instagram reel I put out. Somebody jumped down my throat for it and said they were $19.99. Excuse me. I mean, they were $30. They're $30. You do not have to spend $350 on a knife. They are nice knives. I mean, Benchmade and Montana Knife Company, they make great boning knives, but for $35, and you can use the cutting board that you have in your cutting board cabinet in the kitchen, and you can do it yourself. It's extremely doable, right?
My favorite knife is a sharp one.
Absolutely.
I can sharpen just about any knife. Yeah.
That's another topic to talk about, how to sharpen knives, that we can get to when y'all want to, because that's a heck of a lot easier when it comes to boning knives than anybody actually thinks either. You don't need any special tools to do that. You need legitimately the leather belt around your waist. Attach that to a door handle, a leather strap. I haven't, so I just did my books because I only have about another 2 weeks of butchering before I jump into making summer sausage and jerky for my clients. And I did my books. I've done 36 elk so far this year and 26 deer. And I have all week and all next week's booked up with deer. So I'll hit my numbers, but I have not touched my butchering knives to anything but a leather strap since September 22nd.
Can you show us how to do that?
Actually, he just did a video, 4 days ago, 5 days ago on his Instagram.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
cool.
go to the Instagram reel, go to Cut Right Mobile. That's the Instagram handle, is Cut Right Mobile, and it shows you how to do it. It's as simple as, if you're holding your belt out and it's going this way, you hold the blade of the knife and you don't cut into the belt, you drag it across the belt. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Larry,
and it's
Larry, I know you're going to ask. So Victorinox.
Victorinox.
So,
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So,
all right. Age-old
sorry, Michael. Sorry to hijack that.
dude, we jumped down so many rabbit holes. There is no hijacking. We spent a lot of time in Wonderland, so you're good. So,
Okay.
all right. So this is a topic that I've talked with several people about, and I know you and I are on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
You being the background that you have, going to med school, you understand, kinesiology. Understand the muscle structures,
Mm-hmm.
aging
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
an aging an elk.
What do you want to know? What do you want to know? I've had clients recently here that have asked me to age their animals for 2 weeks. One guy wanted 3 weeks, and the 3 week one was a big bull. It was a dandy. It was a big bull. And he got about as much meat back as if he had killed a 3-year-old cow. And he was, boy, was he mad at me. I mean, I got accused of stealing meat. Whenever a client says something about where's the rest of my meat, I always, as politely as I can, say, man, you have no idea how many animals we kill in my household. The last thing I need is any of your meat.
Right,
And
right.
so aging is a process in which if you listen to it all over the YouTubes, they're going to say, "Oh, the enzymes do their thing within the meat." That's a small part of the story. What actually happens with aging, it's it's a job that the mold and the fungus that are naturally in our environment do. So when you hang your meat in a garage fridge, right? If you're not hanging multiple animals, go to Salvation Army or Goodwill and buy a $300 garage fridge. Take the shelves out and throw your quarters in there. I've done it for my own personal animals. It's still what I do, right? And the mold and fungus that are in that fridge and in the air populate that meat. I mean, as you take a breath in right now, you're breathing in mold spores, you're breathing in fungus spores, but we have an immune system, so it's able to stop that stuff. Those mold spores and those fungus spores land on the meat surface and they sit there and they start to feed on the sugars and the nutrients that are on that meat. And then they grow arms, like hundreds of thousands of arms off of each cell. And those arms are called hyphae. And essentially, what the hyphae do, if this is the surface of the meat, that mold spore lands on top, and those hyphae work their way down through all the muscle fibers. And it separates those muscle fibers. And now the enzymes that are inside that meat start to work a little bit more. But at the same time, those hyphae are like the roots of a tree, right? And the roots of a tree are where the water and the nutrients are sucked up. So those hyphae are feasting on the sugars and the myoglobin and the nutrients that are in the muscle, and they're aging it. And so that's when you see a well-aged piece of meat, you can go to Las Vegas, anywhere, look at those expensive meat shops, and there's a cap. Depending upon how long you age it, it could be a quarter inch. If it's aged a real long time, it could be an inch, inch and a half, whatever. And that's called a rind. Um, I've never personally eaten it. I don't have any intention of eating it. It's dried out meat, right? I'm not doing it. Um, but what it does, the way I like to describe this to my clients, and I've run experiments on this. If you take a 500-gram steak, and I only did grams because it was easier to see the loss, and you age it and I aged it for 12 days. And there's two different kinds of aging, which we'll get into in a minute. But you dry age it, which means it's open air aging. And I like 38, no higher than 40 degrees. 38 is kind of my sweet spot, right? So 38 degrees, those fungus are doing their things. You get this crust on top. It feels super hard. You take your knife, you cut that crust off. Your 500-gram steak is now 312 grams. Between 312 grams and 316 grams, I did 12 different 500-gram steaks, and they all landed between 312 and 316. So you lose what, 42% of your meat doing that. But the 312 grams of steak that are left have the flavor of 500 grams condensed down to 300 grams, so more flavorful. And the tenderness that it has, there's really no comparison. I mean, you could cut a 12 aged, dry aged backstrap after you sear it in cast iron to a medium rare or rare. You can cut it with a butter knife, as is the sharpest thing you'll ever need to cut a steak that's aged like that. So if you like the flavor of your steaks, if you like the flavor of your backstrap, tendies are a different story, but backstraps, sirloins, whatever, age them. Yeah, you have to have a balance because you're going to lose a lot of meat by the aging process, but do you want quality or do you want quantity? And if you want the quality, then you have to do the aging process and you get the same flavor profile. So think about that. You cut into a big piece of backstrap that you hung, let rigor mortis come out for, because nobody should cut an elk less than 24 hours. It needs to hang 24 hours. I mean, well, hopefully you've never seen dead bodies, but when people die, they get rigor mortis and they get all stiff and everything else. Your animals do the same thing. There's some science out there that says in elk it takes 4 hours to come out. There's some that say 12 hours. I say at the very least, wait 24 hours before you cut your animal. At the very least, right? But so you wait 24 hours, you bite it, you cut that backstrap, you're like, wow, this is flavorful. It's a little tough, but it's still flavorful. I love the flavor of elk. Age it for 2 weeks. You're going to get that flavor condensed down, and it's going to be very powerful and delicious. And it'll no longer be you're chewing on it for 42 seconds before you swallow it. It'll be 3 chews and you swallow it. But as I said, you lose meat. So an example today, I had a guy's deer hanging in my walk-in. It hung for 8 days. Actually, no, this was an elk. It was an elk from Turnbull. It was a Turnbull depredation tag up in Washington. Small elk. The back straps, he wanted me to age it all. And I was like, it's not a big elk. So the size of the elk also determines, in my opinion, how long you should age it. It was a smaller elk. And he wanted it 2 weeks. And I said, well, I'm gonna help you out here. 8 days is what you really need. I actually thought 7 days, but I couldn't get to it yesterday because I had to work my real job. And so I did it today. I weighed his back straps before I put him in the walk-in cooler. They weighed 11 pounds. 2 back straps, 11 pounds. Clearly, he needs the app to learn how to take the back strap off the right one. Just going to go ahead and preface that because 2 back straps weigh 11 pounds.
Yeah.
That's on me to judge at this point. I'm his butcher, not his field dresser.
It should have been 18 pounds, right?
So he got 11. He had 11 pounds on 2 pieces of back strap. It was a small elk, right? It aged for 8 days. They weighed 9 pounds, and I'm going to post a reel about this on all these numbers because I think everybody. So they aged for 8 days. They weighed 9 pounds. So they lost 2 pounds of weight, right? Which is about average. You're going to lose between 10 to 20% in the aging process, right? So it lost about 18%. After I cut his meat down, and I need to look at my phone at this picture to make sure I'm giving you the right number. So they weighed 9 pounds. After I cut the meat down and took the rind off and all the stuff off, anybody, Michael, you want to guess as to what they weighed?
Oh, 4.5.
Oh man, you're good. They were 5 on the nose. They were 5 on the nose. So he lost 42%. Now, when you age a hind quarter that's still attached to the bone, you are going to lose less. Why is that? Because not all of that surface of the muscle is exposed to the mold and the fungus and creating that cap or that rind on the animal.
Right.
When you age a backstrap, when you age a free steak sitting on a tray in your fridge, now you have the entirety of that muscle that the mold and fungus are going to work on. So when you age, I like to say you lose on average, if you age it correctly in the right temperature, even on a hind quarter, you're looking at losing between 25 and 35% of the consumable yield. But the quality of your product is going to be so vastly superior that, I mean, my wife refuses to eat venison. So I have never, ever fed her venison that she knows about.
That she knows of.
It's every single piece of meat that I cook her, it's elk. You know, she's like, wow, how did you and Luke killed like more than you were supposed to? I'm like, no, it's elk. Don't worry about it. It's really good. So it literally, I mean, it's amazing what aging correctly can do, right? And that it really is. It's a microbiological process, right? The mold and the fungus, in my opinion, and so just so you guys know, I have a PhD in biology and work with people in the meat science industry and people at my college and stuff. Yeah, the enzymes have a role, but the bigger role actually belong to the mold and the fungus that inhabit it. And then, hold on, Mike.
No, you're good.
I got one more. So, I just did a podcast with Dan Staten over at Elk Shape, and he asked about this. And say you cash in all of your domestic capital. And if you don't know what domestic capital is, that's doing all the stuff your family asks you to do. So you put time away in the bank and then you cash it all in for a trip to Colorado or to the woods for 10 days and you do that. But the promise that you made your family or your significant other is that when you get out of the woods, yeah, honey, I hate sunshine and beaches and stuff, but we'll go to freaking Mexico 2 days after I get out of the woods. So you kill an animal and you're like, well, holy hell. Now I got to give it to this butcher. I don't trust him, but I don't know what else to do. There is a lie that, and I promise you it's a lie, and I will say it with confidence, and I would say it to anybody's face. I've worked with Dick Bass at U of I on this. It is a lie that people are like, well, you can't age your meat after you freeze it. That is, if I can curse here, that is the biggest line of bullshit you'll ever hear in your life. Butcher your animal. It requires planning on your part because you have to keep in mind now you have like an animal that may only have hung 2 days. So you don't have that tenderness. You may not have that intensity of flavor profile. And say in June, you're going to have a barbecue and you're going to cook some backstrap for people. So the middle of May, May 20th, they're coming over June 4th, May 20th, pull your backstrap out, set it on a wire cookie rack in your garage fridge. There can be beer, there could be fruit, there could be Oscar Mayer bologna in there. It doesn't matter what's in there. The fungus and mold are going to do their thing. It truly, guys, it doesn't matter what's in there. You can still have your Miller Lite in there, open the fridge and grab one. It doesn't freaking matter. Leave it in there for 14 days. And then when your company comes over, take the rind off and you have 14-day dry age backstrap for them.
Wow.
And I have done blind taste tests on this, truly blind. I use top round because that's like my third or fourth favorite steak on the animal. And I wasn't willing to do it with my favorite steaks. I did it with top round. I froze the top round solid, left it in the freezer for 14 days, and I aged it fresh 14 days. Cleaned it up, wrapped it, froze it, took the top round out of the freezer, thawed it, dry aged it for 14 days, seared them both in the same heat cast iron and the same bear grease to the exact same internal temperature with the thermometer. Had 6 people over. I just told them they were eating elk and gave them plate A and B, and they had to tell me which one they liked better. There was no pattern whatsoever. You can age after it's frozen and it's the exact same. So if you don't have the ability to age it, you don't have the time, you don't have the patience, you don't have whatever, butcher it, freeze it, and then pull it out and age it after. It is 100% the same process.
Mike, when you're aging it, you just put it open. You don't cover it with anything. Just
Correct. Leave it open. Leave it open. So, in my son kills elk on August 2nd every year on a tag that's within a mile of agricultural field. And we bring it in and we just put it in the garage fridge open. But with the aging process, yes. So you don't want it sitting on a cookie pan because then the bottom part's not going to get the mold and the fungus attached to it to do its work. So I always say, the cookie racks, like the wire trays, I don't know what the hell they're called. I don't bake, but set it on there and then set a cookie pan underneath of it because you might get some drippings coming down from it. And that way it can do its thing. If you're really anal and really just want to see like every other day, every third day, whatever, just flip it over on that thing. But you don't have to. So yes, leave it open air because if there's that lid on it, you're not going to get the microbiological biome on top of it that you're looking for.
thanks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't believe that you can refreeze meat. I got a friend of mine that he called me one day and goes, can you refreeze meat? Because I want to get a few steaks out, but I'm like, yeah, I do it all the time. He's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah. It's not
Michael, what do you think about that? I want to hear your opinion on refreezing meat.
About refreezing.
Yep.
I've done it a couple of times. I want to say I want to say I noticed it. There was a slight difference, but I don't think so much. If you were in a bind, yeah, you could do it to get away with it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
my preference, no. That's why usually when packaging, it's okay, how many steaks and I always go, okay, I know how many, Liz is gonna eat one, Knox is gonna eat one, depending on the size, and I'm probably gonna eat two. So we'll always package, according to that. But no, I've done it a couple of times in the past.
Yeah.
When you first brought
You
up the
can.
subject, Michael, of aging,
Yeah.
I, I thought you were going to start talking about the hunters.
No, no.
I think the last time that I worked with Michael and he taught me how to chuckle at elk, I think his goatee was not gray, if I'm not
No,
mistaken.
no. It's this is I didn't have any gray hairs when I started out calling academy. It's just from hanging around
Well,
with all these riffraffs and all the lessons and stuff. And yeah,
well,
All these
when I
silver hair
started
guys.
when I started butchering, I had hair.
yeah, yeah.
So I mean, that shit
That's
fell
funny.
out faster than you can imagine.
Mike, you touched on something a minute ago that again is again a, a big debate, big topic
Mhm.
of leaving bone in or breaking everything down to pack it off the mountain. My take on it, I prefer to leave the bone in. One, for me, it's easier to handle, it's easier to pack off the mountain, it's easier to hang, but also two, you lose a lot less meat because you have a lot less meat surface that is getting the crust and breaking down. You're shaking your head, so obviously you kind of
Yeah.
feel the same way.
So I think if possible, if you're not in the hinges of Hades and have to hike out, carry the extra, I don't know, I that elk I weighed the bone today, carry the extra total 13 pounds per hind quarter, 14 pounds. I mean, if it's a big old bull, it's going to be a lot heavier than that, but like carry the extra weight out. Not only does it eliminate the surface area, remember how I talked about that rigor mortis and stuff is like super tight? And when those muscles contract, if you kill that animal, get up to it, skin it, pull it off the bone, now those muscles are going to contract, but they don't have any anchor that they're holding to. So when they contract, they're going to contract like that. And then when they relax, they're going to relax. But what my personal experience, and this is anecdotal, the couple times that I have boned out animals in the field, even with proper aging and everything, I did not, through the aging process, get the tenderness that I thought I should get from those animals. And anecdotal, no science, this whatsoever. I have found leaving it attached to the bone and hanging it and aging it that way produces the tenderness that I want on those primals on the hind quarter.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you've never butchered an animal, or if you or maybe you've butchered animals, but you're not kind of super confident with what you're doing, when you take out that, you know, 42-pound glob of primals on the hind quarter, good luck figuring out what it is if you don't know the muscle arrangements. You're going to look at it and be like, well, that one's getting wrapped as hind quarter. I mean, like, because you won't be able to if you don't. And so this is also on the app. I go through muscle fiber structure. So if you did in the past wrap something as hind quarter and you open it and you're like, well, I don't know if that's a good steak or not, because I promise you, the people on YouTube that have extremely successful channels and millions of views of their videos, they're wrong. I promise you, they're wrong. I some of my other people I work with, when I posted an Instagram reel calling them out, not by name, but that everyone knew who they were. They got a hold of me and they're like, sure you want to do that? I'm like, yeah, I do, because I'm not so much worried about partnerships as I am like hunters not eating meat saying like, ugh, who in the hell would hunt elk? This thing's tough as a piece of leather. Because if you follow those channels, you're going to make steaks out of stuff that should either be jerky or stew meat, and it's going to be horrible. And then you're also going to take one channel in particular recommended you take the sirloin, because the individual they had on there was, he's like, well, this is soft. It sits above the head of the femur. No real muscle structure. I don't know what that is. I've always just ground it. You're going to
Oh,
grind the absolute best steak on the animal.
oh,
And I'm not gonna call those guys out, but they're two of the most successful YouTube channels in the hunting industry. And you can figure them out pretty easily if you
yeah. You know,
Google
the
it.
other thing that cracks me up with some of those is, people talking about, oh man, this hind quarter on this bull, it had to have weighed between 100 and 110 pounds, and it was a rough pack. And I know I talked to James about, because it's funny you mentioned James. I talked to James about this. And did you see the video he did where he actually weighed him?
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh,
average average weight of a good hind quarter, 76 pounds.
and that's a good one. So here's one. So that animal from Turnbull, that younger elk that I picked up and hung for the guy, I grabbed the hindquarter and I knew right away it wasn't that big.
Yeah.
Right? Just pick, if I'm able to pick it up with one hand with no strain, I'm like, okay. But it was a big elk to those guys, and all elk are big,
Yeah.
right? They're just big animals, even if they're small. And he sent me his order. He wanted 25 pounds of breakfast sausage, 25 pounds of Italian sausage, 25 pounds of grind, a handful of steaks, one small roast, and then 5 pounds of jerky, like finished jerky product. And I was like,
You don't
I,
have enough.
I got to be honest with you. You're gonna get the steaks and one small roast, and if you want 5 pounds of jerky, that's about 17 pounds of wet meat. You're gonna have about 25 pounds of meat total to grind left over. And he was, no way, no way. So I weighed his hindquarters, and he swore up and down they were like 60, 65 pounds. They were 29 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they feel heavy though, right? I mean, like they do. Everything feels heavier. I mean, you guys probably have all, I mean, I see deer on someone's wall down there. I mean, you've all killed deer and walk up to deer and be like, this is the biggest freaking deer I've ever killed. I'm probably going to get 80 pounds of meat. I've never butchered a deer and got 80 pounds of meat off of it.
I'm like 60, 65.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my buddy up here in northern Idaho killed a 180-inch whitetail, biggest Idaho whitetail I've ever seen in my life. And I said, I want to help you butcher that, because it's going to take some work and some time, because it was probably 8 years old, 9 years old. We got 60 pounds of clean meat. Like I believe in clean grind and everything else. 60 total pounds of clean meat from a huge buck in Idaho. I mean, the average deer in Idaho, when people call me, I'm like, just to set your expectations, your average deer that most people kill in Idaho, since it's an opportunity state, is a forky. I mean, or a spike or whatever. I'm like, you're going to get between 30 and 40 pounds of meat off of that.
Yeah.
And so, everything feels heavier when it is, but getting to that point of bringing it out on the bone, I think if you have the physical ability or the ability to bring it out on the bone, it really behooves you. If you're really worried about the weight, cut that lower leg off. Get that freaking hoof off.
Oh yeah.
You do not need to carry the dangly hoof above your backpack, have it hitting you in the top of the head. That is just extra
But
weight.
on that hind leg, that is one of the toughest joints. I mean, the front leg, getting at the joint's pretty easy to find, but the
Yes.
hind leg is the one that gives people the most fits. And generally, it's because they're cutting way too high.
They're cutting too high. So that joint's really weird, Michael. As you know, it's
Yeah,
like two joints.
it
There's
is.
like a top joint that has an extension of the tibia that comes up. So you go to cut through the top one, and you're sawing, you're like, I frick. you actually need to be a little bit lower than that. It's about an inch and a half lower
Yeah.
than that on that secondary joint. So my recommendation in the field, even on deer, when you're taking off that, get everything else done first. Get it quartered out, get the hindquarters off, get it in bags, tie the bag down where that joint is. And at that point, you can go ahead and, curve your blade over trying to bust through bone. Do the lower legs last, get the whole animal done, and then cut the legs off. And if you can't get them off, I mean, you can carry a little Wyoming saw or something like that, but they
Yep.
come off with a knife. You just, after doing it a couple times, you'll remember. And there's also on the Instagram channel or Instagram page, whatever they're called, I show where those joints are too. That was a year or two ago, so you have to look through the videos to find that, but that's on there as well.
Mike,
Mike,
does your,
Larry,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I've always left the ribs for an elk. Are they worth salvaging at all?
Michael, do you want to answer this before I do?
it's one of those things. If you have the ability that you're not packing very far, if you're close by, I mean, it's one of those things that you leave the fat cap on the side of the ribs, and then there's some different things that you can do with the ribs that you can actually cook them in style. If you're packing a ways, you can actually start at that back rib. And what I do on mine is I start at the back rib and I come up the back edge. And then I fillet that part off the rib. And then I come up the inside of the rib, roll it. And so basically you're just following the ribs and you're rolling that thing all the way across. And then you end up with that flank coming
Hmm.
off the ribs. So do you
Hmm.
need to take the actual rib bone out? Not if you're packing. But if it's one of those things where, oh, I shot this in Farmer Bob's field and he came out with the front end loader and dropped it in the back of my truck, then yeah, take the ribs.
My turn.
Absolutely.
I don't take them. I don't take them. I like I don't. I mean, I take the flank. I used to take them and add it to my grind, and every once in a while I would get the bite when I make a hamburger or a chili or something like that, a little bit of paraffin wax because there's connective tissue and fat interspersed on that rib roll. And so I tried to get all fancy a couple years ago, and I think I saw it on a meat eater thing about making what is called a rouladon,
Mm.
right? Like where you take the rib roll, which on an elk, I mean, it's a 3.5 foot by 2 foot rib roll, and you could put vegetables and banana peppers, pickles, all these things. Then you roll it up, you tie it, throw it in the oven, and bake it for hours upon hours. And the idea is the fat drains off and stuff. For my palate, it was a little bit below mediocre at best. And I thought I carried 30 extra pounds of meat out that I didn't like to eat. So I don't take it. You
Yeah.
know, I don't, I honestly, I don't bother with it. Um, I don't like it in my grind. When I go to a client and they have a full animal there, I ask them straight up, like, do you want quality grind or quantity grind? Because that's really what you're getting at. Because I mean, if you're not doing the rule it on, or you're not trying to, even when you cut some of the steaks off, like there's that layer there of fascia, that sticky fascia. So as a butcher, when you go to try to cut one piece off and it intersects itself, it leads you down this rabbit hole. So, and if you've ever gone in between the ribs and take the individual strips off between the ribs and you try to clean that off, as a butcher, I try to clean that off to give my clients clean grind. You have like 36 pieces of rib meat there, and it may yield 3 pounds if your knife is sharp as a razor and you clean all that off. It's not worth the time. But with that being said, I do always take the brisket of the animal, which is right there below the neck. I always take that. That goes into grind. It does not cook like a moo cow brisket. There's no fat in it. It's not going to give you the same flavor, but it's great for grind. It also takes a marinade pretty well, so you can make fajita meat or strip steak meat off of that. And then the other one that a lot of the good old boys that I hunt with, or that taught me how to elk hunt up here in Idaho, I remember killing my first bull with them, and I was like, well, we got to get the neck. And the guy looked at me. I remember him. He lives in Kansas now. He looked at me and he goes, "The hell are you? Some type of butcher or something? You don't take that neck." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Forget the neck." And then I tell you what, I know where I kill animals. I've been hunting the exact same canyons and mountains for 11 years. I know what rock to stand on if the wind's blowing a certain way. It's still a hunt because you got to find them and play them. But I'm always within 2 or 3 miles of my truck. And the two things I take last if temperature permits on an animal are the neck and the ivories. Because I know if I leave the ivories in that elk, I could be damn near dead, but I'm going to go back and get those ivories because they are my treasure. I mean, I don't have any on the wall here. They're all sitting in front of me. I've taken all my heads off the wall, everything else. My students at the college, they're like, "Oh, let's see some of the elk you killed." And I'm like, "Okay." And I scroll through and I show them the hair pics. So I take pics of hair. I mean, I never post horns of anything that I kill. It's just something I just have never done. I feel enough people do it. And I also truly believe the value of a big bull elk is the same value of a cow that you kill, because the true treasure is you eating the animal, right? Like it's always cool to kill a big animal, but you can't tell me that an 8-year-old bull tastes better than a 3-year-old cow, because you would just be lying.
Yeah.
Like, like I've said this 100 times. Baby animals taste great. Like if you're allowed to kill baby animals and you don't need like 200 pounds or 150 pounds of meat, kill a baby animal because they taste so good. They
Oh,
are delicious.
the
But
tenderness of a fawn.
oh God, the tenderness of a fawn. If you get one of those elk that the spots have just come off of it and it still has its milk teeth in it, like you don't even need a knife to field dress it. I mean, you just pull the meat off of it. But I digress. So I always leave the ivories in it because I'll throw my, and this is bad, I have a mini sawzall. I will throw a mini sawzall in my pack so I can get a bone in neck roast and bring it out, because I think bone in neck roast are truly the cat's meow. I think, neck meat is great. I never ever grind the neck meat. In fact, the deer I killed on Monday, I took the neck meat off in my cul-de-sac and I leave it whole because I think neck roasts are just delicious. A lot of people grind them. But if you can get it bone in and bring it out and then cut them into, 3 to 4 inch neck roast with the bone in, I mean, it'll be something that you always try to do. It is that.
Wow.
Huh. I have to keep that in mind. Haven't done that one. So,
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
Mike, do
Oh,
you
go
have
ahead,
a
Greg.
video that, like, if you're dissecting the hind quarter, tells you what cut each section is?
Yes, sir. That's in the butchering section. So in the butchering section on the app, I hold the animal up and I orient you to let you know what is the lateral side, so the outside, and the medial side, the inside that's facing the animal, and what cuts are on it. And in addition to that, below all the videos, we built something called meat maps, which are basically pictures we took of the hindquarters and then outlined each cut on them so you know where they are. And then in the actual video part, before I remove any silver skin, anything, I show you like, all right, this is the sirloin tip. This is the sirloin. The top round is this one on the outside. The bottom round is this one on the outside. The top round is on the inside. This is the sartorius muscle. This is the gracilis muscle. The eye of round sits between the two. And then when I butcher it and you have it mirroring up there, I'm like, okay, where you can hit a button that says bottom round, and the 11-minute segment of the bottom round, removing the silver skin, cut down this seam. You want the medial side or the lateral side facing up to you. Cut down this seam, lift up. Yes, it goes through 100% of all of that. And any ungulate has the same anatomy, right?
That's
What
definitely something I need. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, bears are different, and we just haven't been fortunate enough to kill a bear in an area or at a time when we could get good video from it. So bears look different, right? But elk, deer, you know, all of that stuff, it all is the same. It all looks the same.
Thank you.
Yeah, Greg,
Yeah.
make Franz get his own cut right.
Make Fritz get it. Yes,
Yeah,
I
make
agree.
make
Yeah.
Fritz get his own. That yeah, don't let him piggyback off you on that one too. So,
Yeah.
all right, here we go. We are going to this is wives' tale section of the discussion. So,
Okay.
oh, when you get back to camp and you have your elk quarters, take the bag off and sprinkle pepper on it. That'll help season the meat as it ages, and it'll keep the flies and the bees off. Mike.
So I'm going to, as stupid as this is, don't buy it from me. Like I'm gonna sell this. It's called FTB, stands for F them bees. After my experience this year hunting with my son, go to Costco and get the coarse ground black pepper in the big container. It's $7.99. Actually, I think it was $4.49. Get that, dump it into a sandwich Ziploc bag. The pepper doesn't season the meat, and you don't need to do it back at camp. Where you freaking need to do it is when you kill that elk at 6 in the morning and you're like, oh, this is great. I have an hour and a half before the sun gets on it. I'll totally be able to get it done at that time. And everything's great. And then you cut down with the hair along the spine and you pull the hide down, and all of a sudden they start to come. And I'm talking about the yellow jackets. And they start to come and they're nasty. And you touch one and it bites you, and you start swinging your knife around and your hat around. The black pepper, coarse ground black pepper sprinkled on the open surface of your animal as you're field dressing it, will decrease greatly the amount of yellow jackets. The reason that it doesn't season your meat is because it doesn't penetrate the meat. That's why you get the coarse ground, not that fine ground BS.
Uh,
Get the coarse ground. Don't ask me the biology behind that. I am not an entomologist, but it keeps those efforts away really, really well. When I was field dressing my son's elk this year, I got stung 17
Oh
times.
my
oh,
God.
17 times. My 14-year-old, I mean, he's a savage, but I had bumps on my head. I looked like something from the Elephant Man. My hand was swollen the size of a grapefruit. I was stung 17 times when we were packing it out that mile, and we tried to do it in one trip. He stopped me and he says, "Hey, Dad, you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." And he said, "You don't look too good." I said, "Well, I don't feel too good." And he said, "Set all this down. Can you just carry the heart bag back? Because we always eat the heart." And I said, "Yeah, I'll carry my backpack and heart bag." And I said, what are we gonna do with the rest of the meat?" And he's like, I'll carry. He had a front quarter on each shoulder like this and a hind quarter in his pack. He made his way to the truck and was already halfway back to my hind quarter and the loose meat bag and the gun that he shot with before I even got to the truck. He said, "Dad, just sit at the back of the truck. I don't need your help." He carried his whole elk out. We get in the car or in the truck, and he said, "Are you going to be okay to drive home?" And I drank a Mexican Coke and ate like one of those honey stinger waffles. I'm like, "Well, I don't know. We'll find out when we were going down this Forest Service road." He said, "But I taught you how to drive last week, so you'll be fine." He said, "Dad, you taught me how to drive on like a country road. Like we have to take the highway home." And I said, "It's about the same thing, son. You'll be all right. You have to drive." So black pepper, coarse ground black pepper. There's no seasoning the meat. That's all. That is a wives' tale. But I will never ever hunt without a sandwich Ziploc bag of it in my kill kit
coarse
again.
ground pepper. Perfect.
Yep, coarse ground pepper. If you want to pay me $10 for a little bag of it with a fun label that says FTB, standing for FUCK then B's, like you could pay me $10 for it and I'll ship it to you, or you could go buy it for $4.49 at Costco.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Wives' tale number two. This one deals with deer because most people go ahead and gut and drag.
Mhm.
So, oh, you need to drag that deer to a water source because you need to wash out the inside of the cavity and get all that residue out of there and all the blood out of there so it won't taint the meat.
Nah, it's absolutely bogus. 100% bogus. And what I would say, so if you look, I gutted the deer that I shot on Monday. It's the first animal I've gutted in a
I
decade.
know I saw your post and I saw,
Oh my God. You want to see like somebody that knows their way around a knife and an animal? Like it wasn't even a hunt. I killed it on a friend's property. It lasted 3 seconds. And it was a good buck, but it lasted 3 seconds. And she comes running out of her house. She's like, "Hey, congratulations." And I looked at her, I was like, kinda. It's right there. And what Michael said with somebody coming with the front loader, she's like, "I'll get the front loader." And I'm like, uh, okay. And she brought it over to her shop and she's like, "Well, go ahead and gut it. I'll get the thing." And I stood there looking at that animal for about 10 minutes
how
thinking,
do I do this?
how in the hell do I gut an animal again? I haven't gutted an animal. I mean, honestly, it's been 10 years since I gutted an animal. It was actually really cathartic and good to do it to see all that anatomy again. Um, and I did spray it out with a hose to get the blood because I just didn't want the blood dripping down underneath the tailgate of my truck as I was driving home. Because if I got stopped and there's that, now all of a sudden they check. So here's the deal. That's bullshit. You
Yeah.
don't have to do that. If you do that, and that's fine. Like you kill an elk and it's dirty as the hinges of Hades. There's hair all over it. Spray it. Get that crap off. You will thank me. Your wife will thank me when there's not elk hair all over the floor. There's not elk hair in your grind. It's not on her table. Spray it off. But after you spray it off, you need to wipe it down with acetic acid. What's acetic acid? White vinegar. It's 99 cents a gallon at the grocery store. If you don't have white vinegar, apple cider vinegar is totally freaking fine. It does the same thing. 50% vinegar, 50% water. You can get a squirt spray bottle. You can wipe it on a paper towel. You can put it on a rag. Just wipe it down. And that kills the bad bacteria that are in that water because there's bacteria. We all grew up here drinking out of garden hoses. I
Hmm.
still do. Like we have immune systems. Dead meat does not have an immune system. So just wipe it down with 50% vinegar, 50% water. Honestly, white vinegar is the cheapest, which is why I say it, but any sort of acetic acid and vinegar will work. I would say with any animal that you do gut and get out whole, take the tenderloins out when you get home. You don't need to age those tenderloins. If you age those tenderloins, you're going to end up with like little hot dog tenderloins. Like the tenderloins dry out really, really fast. And then the second caveat with taking the tenderloins out, they go a lot farther back to the hindquarter than you actually think they do. Like when you gut the animal, you'll be able to see there's a hole in the pelvic bone called the obturator foramen. It's like a really freaking big hole. We have it too. Our sciatic nerve comes out of it, and there's muscles on top of it. That tenderloin actually travels through there and attaches on the face of the pelvic bone. So if you have a gutted animal, don't be afraid to go down into because you'll be on the inside of the cavity of that animal. Don't be afraid to go clear down to the inside of the cavity. You'll end up with about 4 or 5 ounces more of your tenderloin than if you cut it short, where most people do.
Perfect. All right, guys. Last opportunity for questions. We'll go around the room. Jim?
No, not really. What about, well, I do. What about aging meat if you don't have room for it in your freezer and an ice chest as long as you change the water all the time?
Don't don't get your meat wet. Three
No, that's
rolls
what I
of
mean. Don't
meat
get it wet. Put the meat on top of it on a rack
Above the ice, you mean?
above the ice.
above
On
the
a rack.
ice.
Yeah, above the ice in a rack and then dump the water out like every other day or daily.
Like the
The
meat
ice
won't
chest.
get wet.
If you put it on a rack and put it on top of the ice.
That's beautiful. I would have no problem with that. Like Michael, you may have a different opinion, but like in the caveat to that, just like your fridge. So if you put it in a fridge or whatever, I would just open that daily. I mean, when I put meat in my fridge, which essentially is a chest, an ice chest, right? I open it daily. I'm anal, so I'll open it like 3 or 4 times a day. Every time I walk by in the garage, I'll open it, just let a poof of fresh air in there. So what I would say, Jim, with that, even if it's on a rack, I would flip it over. Like open it, flip it over, close it. Like evening before bed, open it, flip it over, close it. I would just tend it. I don't see any is and you also have to mind the temperature. Like make sure it's a good cooler and not, a cheapy cooler. But if you have a big 210 and you have it in there, like that's fine. I would
Okay.
have no problem with that. But remember the three rules of meat are clean, cool, and dry. All right. You want your meat clean. You don't want it dirty. If it gets dirty, spray it off. Do the acetic acid. Cool. It needs to be cool. Like you should touch your meat and it should be cool to the touch at all times. And then dry. I was just having this conversation earlier this afternoon about dry meat and stuff. I've never eaten waterlogged meat. I look at it and I just won't eat it. Like people say it doesn't taste that bad if it sits in the water in the bottom of a cooler. I mean,
Doesn't look good.
No.
Michael, I mean, you've seen it. It turns great. If
It,
I
ear-
get that on my animal, I cut it off. Even
Early in my elk hunting career, we pulled a bull off a hillside, and it got dirty. And we're 7 miles back in,
Mhm.
and we took those things down to the creek and just dunked them in the creek.
Yep.
We didn't dry them off, and I immediately noticed that it affected the crustacean on the outside. It affected the process of that meat, and it changed a different color. It didn't get the same skin. It didn't smell this. Okay, guys, I'm a fanatic. If there's meat hanging in camp and I'm in camp in the evening, I will probably go over and smell that meat probably a dozen times from the time we got back to camp until the time we get to bed. I love the smell of meat hanging. And because I'm always touching it. Is it cool? How is it? But then also the smell, because it's a field test, sniff test of how your meat's doing. Do I need to run to town? Am I okay with this hanging? What are the nighttime temperatures? What's the forecast? I'm always looking at those things. But that was the one and only time. Now there's Game Grip on the market. Great product for getting hair and dirt off of your meat. Helping keep clean. Small investment to carry some of those. Most definitely. But yeah, and I've done it what you're talking about, Jim, where I've built a rack and I've had dry ice down underneath and had the meat up on a rack so it's suspended above that. Um, did
Yeah,
did did
I'm
that when I was
causing
in
the trouble with that
Colorado.
dry ice because dry ice
Well,
is freeze for meat.
and you can also do it with just regular ice also.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
But I will say, if it comes down to it, and I kill an animal and it's hot as all the as Hades out there, I will dip it into a creek and then put it in game bags and hike it out as long as I'm not leaving it submerged, and that will dry it out. So you can re-dry wet meat. I would rather dunk my meat in a running that sounds really bad, but I'd rather dunk the
meat in a
hindquarters of
running
an
creek.
animal in an ice cold mountain creek than lose the whole thing because of bone rot.
Yeah.
And you can't meat will dry back out if you get it out before a certain point. When you like if it soaks in there for half an hour, 45 minutes, you're kind of at that point, like Michael said, like the crust isn't going to form because what are those bacteria feeding on? They're feeding on the sugar and the nutrients and the myoglobin in the meat. And what's the first thing you notice when you like even a steak, if you're trying to thaw it and you put it in water, it turns light brown and all the myoglobin nutrients and sugars are out of that top part of the meat. So what does the mold and fungus have to eat? Nothing. So you have to dry it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Larry.
On the quarters, when you're packing out, do you recommend taking the skin off in the field or leaving the hide on?
This is a point of definite discussion. When I come up to any animal, I take the hide off. I think as soon as you take the hide off, it releases heat. I've had discussions with other people say, "Hey, on the app, can you do a video where you do the gutless method, but leave the hide on the hindquarters? And I said, well, what the hell's the point of that? It should take you less than 3 or 4 minutes to take the hide off of a hindquarter, right? I mean, you're just cutting it down like and pulling it. It comes off like a tube sock. I said, what's the point of that? And they're like, oh, well, hiking it out, it's cleaner hiking it out. I said, well, if you just lift it up and put it in a game bag, or any solo hunter should have a contractor bag with them so that they can put it on the ground and just throw it on there to keep it from getting dirty.
Mhm.
First thing I do, Larry, is and Michael may differ, but I take the hide off the animal.
Yeah.
Regardless of temperature, it releases heat immediately.
Yeah.
Think about when you kill something in the wintertime and you pull that hide down, poof, steam's coming off that animal. It's the same thing in the summer. I mean, elk's body temperature, ours is 98.6. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. I believe elk run at either 104 or 106.
104.
So even if it's 85, 90 degrees, you take that hide off, it's cooling down, right? It is cooling down immediately. So unless you're, and I've butchered people that have done this before too, and this is no lie, unless you're hooking it up to the back of your four-wheeler and dragging it out, not in game bags, there's no reason to not take that hide off. I've butchered people that have done that. I'm not kidding.
And where that comes from is Fred Eichler did a video a few years ago where he was showing the quickest way to get the quarters off an animal, and he left the hide on.
Yeah.
But what people failed to notice is that was a December hunt that had 3 feet of snow on the ground.
100% fine then. If you're doing muzzleloader elk and there's snow, I mean,
no, yeah, end of August, beginning of September, no way. It's the same thing, and you know, like I talked to these guys a couple of weeks ago or maybe a month ago, and I even mentioned, you know, early in the season you can even take it a step further on that hind quarter where you can just come right underneath the kneecap and put your knife straight in and hit that femur and then follow the line and that big hunk of meat that falls out. Man, you do that on a cool day, and as soon as that hunk, you want to talk about steam escaping that bone, because we talked a little bit about bone sour and kind of in preparation of this talk, but yeah, that's just one of those things. It's and also too, this is in any game. The quicker you cool the meat down, the better quality of meat and taste that you have. I've talked to so many people that they will sit there and tell you that antelope is the most disgusting and worst tasting meat that they've ever had. And I'm like, are you serious? It's one of the sweetest tasting meats. And they're like, oh, they're out there in the sagebrush, and yeah, but they're also feeding on the grasses, and you know, they get down on those creek drainages and get on those soft green grasses down there. If you get that hide off, get that meat cooled quickly, it will retain that sweet flavor. And I'm like, you need to come to my house and let me cook you antelope, and I can guarantee that you will change your mind. And it's not just antelope, it's mule deer, just any ungulate that is a grazer with a 4-chamber stomach. It is the same. So yes, you got to get the hide off, you got to get the meat cooled as fast as possible.
I will add a caveat there, Michael. I've never eaten a mule deer that I like.
Yeah.
If someone gave me a trophy mule deer hunt, I would probably trade it in for an OTC whitetail tag.
And
I think whitetail's far superior table fare to mule deer.
With mule deer, it depends. So, because desert mule deer, they're sagebrushy. They have the sage.
Yeah.
Mountain mule deer, they are getting mountain grasses, but still it's mountain grasses.
Yes.
The only time I really mule deer hunt anymore is if I draw a tag in an area that has alfalfa fields, and I know that those mule deer are feeding in those alfalfa fields all night long.
If they're doing that,
I'll take an alfalfa fed mule deer.
Oh yeah. So, but those are special tags.
Yes. So,
I've never had a mule deer I actually liked.
The mule deer I hunt are in orchards all night.
Oh, well, that's okay. No one feels bad for you over there.
All right. You got anything?
Who?
Greg.
Oh, I didn't hear. Okay.
Huh?
Mike, what website? Where do you go? What are the address? Where do we find all this video information?
So the Cutright mobile app it's on any app platform. So I think there's a web platform for it too, but you can find it on cutright.app. But it on your smartphone, whether it's a Google phone or an iPhone, it's in the App Store and it's Cutright as Cutrite. Yep. So like a rite of passage. So it's cut
App. You say APP or just AP?
APP.
So Greg, do you have Apple or Android?
Yeah, Apple.
Okay. So just go to your app store.
Yep.
Okay.
Just come down to search and then just type in cut right and it'll.
All right. Okay, I'll find it.
And it's one word, Cutrite. And
Thank you.
it'll pull it up. And then, like I said, I try to be pretty active on Instagram. I haven't been in the past couple months with hunting and butchering, but starting it's the 20th. So starting in about 11 days, I put a lot of stuff on there from recipes to tips and tricks and all that stuff. So, if you're on Instagram, it's Cutright Mobile. And I try to stay pretty active. And if you ever have any questions, everyone in this group, if you ever have questions, reach out to me on Instagram. Like send me a message on Instagram. With my butchering service and with Cutright, I pride myself on being as responsive as I possibly can, because I believe in society now, customer service has gone into the crapper. So I think customer service is a huge, important thing for all of us.
The only thing is, Greg, you'll send him a message at 6:30 in the morning this time of year. He'll get back to you at 11 o'clock at night. Sorry, hey, I just got off the mountain.
That's a true story. Either that or I'll reply to you at like 4:30 in the morning. So you might want to make sure your phone's on sleep.
Yeah, no.
My days are long this time of year.
I'm guilty of it too. Mr. Sandy, what do you got?
Larry kind of stole my question, so I haven't come up with another one yet. But I heard that offer about antelope at your house. I'll be over in that area in January. Is that offer open?
You're coming. I don't have any antelope in the freezer right now. I didn't put in for the tag this year, so. When are you coming back up?
It's January. I don't remember which week in January, but I'll let you know when I get to my calendar.
Okay, yeah, because we're getting ready to roll over to a new year and we're getting into show season. So I'm going to be on the road a little bit. I'm going to be back over in Salt Lake for the Western Hunting Conservation Expo in February. Then in March, I'm actually going to be down in Reno for the Reno Sportsman Show. They're just kicking that one off, and I don't know what the hell they're thinking, but they have me doing seminars Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I was like, well, dang it.
That's the time to go fish pyramid.
Yeah, I know, but the only problem is I'm not looking forward to making that drive at that time of year. So I was hoping to fly, but they came back and said, oh no, we're giving you a 10 by 10 booth also. And so now, of course, Liz is like, you need to buy a bunch of swag. And I'm like, no, I just want to get on an airplane, go down,
and be there,
do my seminars, get on a plane and fly home. I don't want to drive the 5 hours. So, but yeah, get a hold of me and January should be, I know I have one trip planned in the middle of the month. So, but we'll see. So,
sounds good.
All right, Mr. Joel, strong silent type. You got everything. You turn the camera off. I wonder if he's putting the kids to bed. You're muted if you're talking, Joel. Going once.
So only thing for any questions was like I struggled with finding the joint, that second joint on that back end this year.
Everybody does. So
Yep.
Mike mentioned he's got it on his, and I think James did it I think James did a video on it
Yes.
3 months ago.
Yep.
So if you either go to the Cut Right Instagram page or the Six Ranch podcast
Yep.
Instagram page, you can do a video on there. Sure, you could also do a if you want to get entertained, do a YouTube search on it because you're going to find everything from Wyoming saws, from skill saws to reciprocating saws, all kinds of different ways. So
I'll tell you
that's it.
on.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Got it?
That's
Yep.
it.
That's it.
Joel, I'll tell you honestly, until you've done, I mean, 20 of them, and I still to this day, like after it takes me about 45 minutes to get all four quarters, back straps, neck, and tenderloins out of an elk in the field. But when I start work, I work. Like I don't stop. Some people stop and have a bite to eat or whatever. Like I'm just working.
Eat
Like
before you start.
I go into a zone and I just work. I get it done. That's 45 minutes solo. I time myself this year is 43 minutes. Um, and I was so tired afterwards. I tried to take that off. And I know this is horrible. I went in with my knife, the last thing I did, and I went down. I'm like, oh, that's wrong. And so I moved the knife like a quarter inch down a little bit, went down, tried to push down. I'm like, nope, that's not it either. And I mean, it just was like going like up and down, like literally until I found it. And then I found it. I'm like, oh, thank God I found that thing.
Yeah.
I've even gotten to the point, Mike, where I've put in, you got the joint right there and you're
Yeah.
soft shank and I'm like, okay, let's go 2 fingers down. Nope, that's not it.
Oh,
Trying to figure out some gauge to figure out. But the only
There's no
problem is
gauge, man.
no, you get it figured out on one and it's like, okay, this is a 4 knuckle on this one. And then
Yeah.
the next year you get an elk that's a different size.
Yeah, it's totally different. So, I mean, the other thing you could do, because it'll still be fresh, those legs should be moving, like literally grab that lower leg, have the hindquarter sit in between your legs. So, the legs pointing that way and really take your time and move that joint and feel where it is. And then you're going to get within half an inch of it. And you're going to be like, I know that effort's somewhere around here. And you just start poking and prodding. There's no rhyme or reason to that. I mean, you get a feel for it after doing so many animals, but in the field it's hard, especially if you didn't skin far enough down or all the way down. Like you have to cut through it. There's no rhyme or
The
reason.
really weird thing,
Yeah.
the really weird thing, Joel, when you do find it and you separate it,
So
the
easy.
smoothness of the inside of that joint you're going to sit there and you're going to look at it and go, okay, how can an animal this big run through the forest and not have that slip or break or when you take it apart, you really look at how it's put together. It's like, this looks like the flimsiest freaking joint, but it's the biggest pain in the ass to try to find and to separate. So I've gotten to the point where I'm sick and tired of, the guy who's going, hey, hind legs ready for you. And I'm like, nope. Just start on that bone and start taking your knife and just start making the little slits down until you find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took me a while. Like
Time.
this
So,
year, I mean, I've never quartered an elk out before. Me and my brother, we've always been able to get a foiler to it and be able to stick the hole on the foiler.
Yeah.
And this year it was in a spot that it did not happen. You weren't getting a bike in there, and so we quartered them out, and I had my older brother helping me. He's like, I don't know, you're about as guess as good as mine. He's always hunted deer. He's never been a big fan of hunting elk, and so he can find it real quick on the deer. But man, I struggled. I was moving that leg up and down. I could not find it.
Yep. It happens. There's no rhyme or reason, Joel, honestly. I wish I had a better pointer for you. I mean, I've gotten
Yeah,
to the point too where I even take my knife and I start shaving away hair over that and pulling it down, like where in like cursing very loud in the woods, like where in the F is that just like just trying to find it, doing everything. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I've had the hide pulled down to like basically mid shin, and I'm like, I still don't know where that effing joint
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
sometimes you
it's
find
a
it quick and
struggle.
easy, and other times it's an Easter egg hunt.
Yep, that's exactly correct.
But it took me about 2 hours for that spike. We ended up pulling out a spike opening night on the rifle hunt.
Nice.
And then
Congratulations.
when I walked down to it, my boy actually ended up, he was just about to pull the trigger on a cow that was 30 yards away from me. And I
Wow.
yell out, "Hey, go ahead and come down. He's dead." He was so disappointed, but ended up filling his tag the next morning
Good.
Oh, good.
for the cow. So
Having two
Cool.
elk
that was
down would have
good.
been quite the job.
So you got Spike and Cal both in the freezer. So you're gonna have
Yep,
some good eats during the winter with both those.
Oh yeah.
yep. So it was a good hunt this year.
Good. Well, congrats, bud. So
Well, that was quick. I'm in. I'm subscribed.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Good
again,
job. I'll be next.
if you guys have any questions, like I said, always reach out to me. I'm always available.
Hey,
Right?
Mike, this has really been a great meeting. Michael, thank you for inviting
Yeah.
him. It's
Yeah,
very highly beneficial.
yeah.
well, if you guys think of
We'll
other
have to do it
questions,
again and
oh, go ahead, Mike.
we'll have to do it again and talk some cooking.
That's what I was going to say. So
Ah,
we can definitely have Mike back again, but I don't know because he's the only one that made money on this deal tonight. I'm just sitting here, just kind of So
you're just being the expediter.
yeah, yeah. So no, would yeah, most definitely love to have you back. So Mike, parting thoughts.
Do it yourself. I mean, you don't want to eat somebody else's meat.
It's a labor of
Like
love.
Oh,
you
I've got one question about that. How do you feel about vacuum packing once you
nah,
cut it? Huh? You don't like that?
nah, saran wrap and butcher paper all the way.
Saran
Like
wrap and butcher paper.
saran wrap and butcher paper. I
Butcher paper and freezer tape's pretty cheap. You can get them from if you have chef food stores or anything like that. You can get pretty good sized rolls.
plus
Lasts a
Mhm.
lot longer too.
you can write a lot on that butcher paper. You can write, top round 2023 and I mean there's so much more to talk about like
Oh,
but the
we
way I
haven't
look
gotten
at it
any.
is
We haven't
unless
even
you
gotten
get a
any
butcher
ground
like
and
me
brats
that
and
can
sausages and summer sausages and so.
yeah unless you trust your butcher to do it and make sure it's just yours. But then I look at it and say, are you put the time in to get the tag, you bought the equipment, the gun, the arrows, the bow, whatever. You negotiated the time away from your family. Just I look at it as finish the job. Like and part of the job is keeping it in your hands. I think as hunters and conservationists and sportsmen, keeping it in our own hands is really important. Um, Especially with the massive boom in hunting. I mean, it's been good for one of my businesses, but so many people don't keep it into their hands. I mean, and I can tell you from experience, and maybe you guys have done this too. You call one butcher, they can't take it. You call another butcher, they can't take it. You call a third butcher, they can take it. You're just looking for somebody and going on the fact that like, oh, they probably know what they're doing. They say they're a butcher. Like,
Yeah.
do it yourself, and you will learn to respect that animal. And plus, honestly, it's going to make you a better hunter because you're going to learn so much of the anatomy. You're going to learn like, oh, okay, if I shoot the animal here, I'm going to lose these cuts, but if I shoot it back here a little bit, I'm not going to lose. There's so many little ins and outs with it, and certain places that you can shoot an animal and kill an animal that you don't destroy the meat, but if and everyone like shoots at that shoulder with the rifle, like
Oh, no.
animal day. Like it dies right away. You shoot through the shoulder. You know you're hitting lungs and stuff and doing that, but you have just lost both both flat iron steaks and probably part of the shoulder clot. And if you've never butchered the animal, you don't know where the flat iron steaks are. If you've never butchered the animal, you probably don't even know where the shoulder clot is. And plus, you'll get to be looking at those cuts and you'll get a feel for it too. Like there's certain animals that the bottom round actually isn't a bad cut. And I do steak bites with it, like younger animals or certain animals, you'll get to feel for what is a good steak. what isn't a good steak. And then I'm just a huge advocate of keeping it in your hands, right? Like finish the job.
And here's the other thing to think about, guys. So, like Mike was talking about, you have the garage fridge that you have your quarters standing up there, they're aging. You don't necessarily have to sit there and cut all four quarters and everything in one night because you have that fridge and that temp. Take it one quarter at a night. Spread it over time. Because when you first start doing it, you're not going to be very fast anyways. So don't think that you need to rush through it and you need to get all this stuff cut up and wrapped in a freezer in one night.
And don't be
Take
scared.
your time,
Like
work on it, learn, and then because with that ground, you can just stockpile that ground as you're working through a few nights. Then get into your grind sessions, and then you can really get into a lot of different things. Pepperoni sticks, jalapeno cheddar brats. I mean, you got a lot of avenues that you can go. And the cool thing is then you kind of start getting creative because then you can start playing with different, you become this master mixologist of, man, I'm going to create some different flavored brats here, and oh, I'm going to create this type of summer sausage, and man, that one was really good. Oh, okay, if I added just a little bit more of this, that gives you the advantage of being able to adjust all that your own, and then you truly at that point then really take that animal that you work so hard on, and then you customize that to your flavor profile, things that you and your family like, and you guys can have a lot of fun with it. Where you go to butchers and it's like, here's our offerings. It's
and
like, you guys do this? No. And in some places, like there's a butcher shop here in town that will only take meat on the bone. So all your loose meat, they will not take your loose meat. So now all of a sudden you can drop your quarters off with him, but then you got to go take your loose meat someplace else to have it ground and something else with. But oh crap, now they got the quarters. Now I have a little bit extra more of grind meat to go over here, but I already dropped this off. And if you're doing it yourself, you got all the ability to do all that stuff.
And I'll leave with this parting thought, like, because a lot of my clients in the butchering realm, they hire me even though they've killed a lot of animals. Like, well, I just don't want to mess it up. You can't mess it up. You cannot mess it up. Well, what if I cut into that steak? Who cares?
You
It's
can
your
still eat it.
you can still eat it. Like, and oh, what if I totally hack job that? Okay, so now that's stew meat or free. You can't mess it up. Like you literally like you can't mess it up. Like it's your
No one will care about it more than you.
absolutely like there's no messing up. And the nice thing is there's only getting better. Like you think you're like I think I'm pretty damn good now, and I get better with every animal I do. Like I figure something out or learn something out. So every animal you do, like Michael said, you do one hind quarter. Well, hell, that didn't go the way I hoped it would do. You have the other one. That one's going to be better. Like you can't mess it up. Like just you really can't.
Always learning, always growing. So,
Yep.
well, Mike, we really appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're an extremely busy guy right now.
Oh, we're good. We're
Well,
good. I appreciate the invite, guys. It's great meeting y'all, and keep in touch. And I hope I get the invite back from Michael. I'm
absolutely. So for those of you that are watching the replay, I know a good majority of you guys do like watching the replay. If you have any questions that you want, send those over to me, and I'll get a list compiled so that way next time Mike comes back on, we'll have those questions to covered. One last housekeeping. Did you guys get a welcome to the Elk Calling Academy newsletter email?
Yeah, I did.
Yes.
Okay. You're going to get another one probably tomorrow that unfortunately kind of introduces me to you guys because I know you guys don't know me very well. But then in January, that's when the newsletter actually starts. I have it built all the way out through August right now. It's one email a month. It is a newsletter. January basically is going to cover going over all of your gear cleaning things and just kind of some tips in there. February is going to start a calling challenge to practice. And so in between those, I will shoot blasts out with news and announcements if any of the brand partners have any sales or anything like that. So, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys did receive those, and welcome to the new ECA newsletter.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
I'm counting
Michael,
on that funnel call.
What's that?
I'm counting on that funnel call. Your water tank funnel.
Oh, not that funnel? Okay.
Not that. No, the
Oh,
one you made out of your
you're waiting
water
for,
tank
yeah,
funnel.
you're waiting
That-
for me to produce the water funnel. Okay, I'll get on that. So, all right, guys.
did
It's
you
always,
change?
oh,
Did you change the source of those emails? Because all of a sudden you started showing up in my spam again.
yes, this is a different platform for the newsletter. It's something
Okay.
it's something that I'm constant contacts trying to raise their prices again. So they're changing their pricing structure. So this is something new that's trying. So yeah, definitely. If you've marked it safe, you should be good from this point on.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks
As
for
always,
joining.
you bet. So as always, keep calling,
Thank you
keep
so much.
practicing. More importantly, though, have fun, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. And I have absolutely no idea what the topic is, but I have 2 weeks to come up with that. So we'll
Good
see.
night, guys. Thanks again.